Hello, everybody. This is Rhett with Graduation and Team Effort and OSPI. I'm here with Tim Fendogger, who's going to be presenting today's data-based webinar workshop, and I'll let him go.
Good morning, everybody. I think this is new for me. It looks like you can't talk to me, but you can post questions, right, Rhett? So it may be a little bit clunky as we go, but don't hesitate to ask questions along the way. I think there's a survey or two that we will be asking them to take during the webinar. And so let's get started. So at the beginning, you'll see the title is, okay, really, it's once we understand the data, how do we tell the story and how do we make a difference? And so that's really what we'll be talking about the next, I think we have, what, 50 minutes or so? So what is the problem? Why are we talking about this? I'm going to start from the 36,000-foot view and bring us down to the local district, what you can do. But I'm going to start large at first and give you some data that might be new to you. We're going to eventually talk about graduation rates in the state of Washington and how we can think about the graduation rates. And what I'm going to share with you is some national data that's brought to you by Mortensen. And you can go to the website, Post-Secondary Education Opportunity. And this comes from the issue number 245. And I would imagine this PowerPoint will be available to them within the next 24 hours. Mortensen does a lot of work for universities in the United States, does data analysis and creates analytics to tell folks how we are doing as a nation or how colleges are doing. About 20% of the reports he creates are useful to the K-12 system, and it actually informs the work that we do. So I'm going to just, these don't inform our work necessarily, but it talks about the state of education in general. The title of this slide is Distribution of Bachelor's Degrees Awarded by Age 24 by Family Income Quartiles, 1970 to 2011. Normally I would ask questions at this point, but I'll have to just tell you, I'll just do the analysis from here, but you'll have to type in your questions. So the folks who get bachelor's degrees by 24, 54% of them, you can see that on the right-hand side, come from that top quartile. And it's been about that 54% over time. Then the next group has 23% obtaining them. So you can see between those two populations, the top quartile and the second quartile, nearly 78% of the bachelor's degrees come from the higher income folks. Just to give you a context for that, the top quartile is about $135,000 and above family income. That second quartile is about $75,000 up to that $135,000. Then if you go to the bottom, you can see 10% of the bachelor's degrees, those children come from that income bracket. So what's that showing is over time, we still have very few individuals earning degrees that come from that bottom quartile. If you were to frame this in terms of social justice, this is the problem. Then you could drill in and say, well, maybe our state is doing better than other states. And this shows that if there's a legend kind of in the center towards the bottom by Louisiana and Mississippi down there in between Texas and Florida. And the lighter the color scale, the fewer students participate from the low incomes. So you can see the states in the Northeast have higher percentage rates, and then further west you go, and sometimes further south they have lower participation rates. So Washington State has 28.5% of the students participating in that group. So if you go back to that slide there and think about how we're doing, we're not doing very well. So I think this just informs the work that we have. Are we preparing our students, number one, and are they participating in the system? By no means is bachelor's degree the only way for attainment of a post-secondary credential. It's just a marker that Mortensen prepares in terms of a broad aggregate analytic. At OSPI, we believe any certificate from a technical community college, apprenticeship, technical college degree, or bachelor's degree, master's degree, and PhD are all valuable. This is just one marker. We've been working on new performance indicators at OSPI, and over the past year, aligning goals towards the performance indicators. This simple model showing how you align the work. There's a new OSPI strategic mission. There are new performance indicators. There are department goals and individual goals, and I would like to unveil the performance, all of these, to you at this point in time. So over the last 9 months, the cabinet members have been working with Randy Dorn to create this new document. So the proposed vision is every student ready for career, college, and life. OSPI's mission now is to provide funding, resources, tools, data, and technical assistance that enable educators to ensure students succeed in our public schools, are prepared to access post-secondary training and education, and are equipped to thrive in their career and lives. So those are the enabling, that mission enables the vision to be realized. And we've focused our efforts on these new performance indicators. And these 14 indicators are the way assistant superintendents and directors will be evaluated in terms of their work at the agency to enable the school districts to accomplish these too. They are not unique. They're similar to the governor's results Washington work, and they have similarities to the State Board of Education, but they have are unique to OSPI. So I'd like to walk you through these. Not too surprising, most of them. They're things that you're used to. The first one is a WA Kids achievement on the WA Kids for kindergartners. The second one is the percentage of students meeting standard on the 3rd, 8th, and 11th grade statewide English, language arts, and math assessment, and 8th grade statewide science assessment. Number 3 is percentage of students making adequate growth toward proficiency in ELA math as determined by the student growth percentiles in 4th and 6th grades. Then percentage of students enrolled, the percentage who earn high school credits in algebra or integrated math 1 by the end of 8th grade or by the end of 9th grade. Then the percentage of students meeting standard on all state assessments required for graduation by the end of 10th grade. The percentage of students enrolled in dual credit programs and percentage of students who earned dual credits and certificates, and that's any of those programs, AP, IB, Running Start, or Tech Prep, or anything that's like that. Then the percentage of students who took the SAT and ACT and the average SAT and ACT scores earned. The percentage of high school graduates who were academically prepared and attended post-secondary education institutions within 1 year of graduating high school. The percentage of students who accessed financial aid for college. The percentage of students who persisted in post-secondary programs and completed certificates and degrees. We have a unique area that we separated out from those kind of broader achievement areas, and then entitled that Dropout Prevention and Graduation. That's where we'll look at the 4-year and 5-year graduation rates, and we'll look at English language arts, math, and science course failure rates in 9th grade, suspensions and expulsions, and we'll look at attendance, especially chronic absenteeism. This was vetted for around 6 to 9 months at the cabinet level, and we used research to help our thinking around what performance indicators should we use. You may be familiar with the work that the American Institute of Research put out. This was back in November 2013, entitled Predictors of Post-Secondary Success. And it's available online if you want to read the article. It's about a 20-page article. It's a meta-analysis of those indicators and what schools could look at in order to best prepare their students. They're highly correlated with post-secondary success. If you were to read the article, they separated the correlations into 3 categories. I didn't give you the least category, which is like a promising practice, but something that had a high measure of correlation were indicators, and the best measure was the predictors, and those are measures that are strongly correlated, that improves post-secondary outcomes, but for which there's not a number or a threshold that's been established. So I want to take a look at those. If you were to correlate what they found with the performance indicators that are on OSPI's list, there's nearly a perfect correlation. So the work is research-based, and we are working on developing reports and analytics to be able to measure the progress and success of the state and supporting you by providing metrics back out to the districts so you can compare yourselves with one another. The goals that Randy Dorn has established around all of those performance indicators have both an aggregate goal and a disproportionality reduction goal. So I want to be clear about that. The aggregate goal, I didn't prepare those for you or put them out, but they're very similar in nature. They are a 2% increase in graduation rates, or a 2% increase in the English language art rates. So there's an aggregate increase for all students in those areas. At the same time, there are targeted subgroups of students who have traditionally been struggling in the school. So whether they're special ed or ELL or African American, Hispanic, or Native American, there has historically been disproportional results in those students. So we have also a goal, along with an increase in the aggregate for each of those, a decrease in the disproportionality by 2%, 2 percentage points for each subgroup. So, for example, if the graduation rate of African American students is 65%, which is what it was in 2013, that was a 10% differential from the aggregate graduation rate. So we want to reduce that disproportionality by 2 percentage points, which would say we'll move from 10% disproportionality to 8%. At the same time, we will increase the aggregate graduation rate from 76% to 78%. So you'll see it's a double whammy. We'll have to then increase aggregate and actually increase the African American graduation rate by 4 percentage points in order to achieve both of those goals. And that would be true for each subgroup. I hope this, it's hard to do this without getting questions. I'm looking at the folks in the room to see if what I'm saying is making sense. I'm trying to think through this slowly to make sure that it's clear. And we decided to use percentage points, which is a hard number, versus an increase of percent. So instead of saying we're going to reduce disproportionality by 10%, you'd have to use a mathematical formula to say 10% of what? We just used a clean 2 percentage points in every category. Some of those categories will be pretty hard, some will be extremely hard, but we are committed to the change. So what occurred over the last 3 or 4 months after the Cabinet unanimously supported the vision and the mission and the performance indicators, they went into a process of goal setting, aligning their work and their director's work and the program supervisor's work with those performance indicators and the mission and vision. They had to develop specific performance targets that would measure their progress in order to achieve these specific goals, and they present each cabinet member with some of their directors presented their goals 2 weeks ago to Randy Dorn. He will meet with them again in January for a progress report on those specific metrics that they've used or that they've established to measure their progress. And they'll again meet in June at the end of the year to evaluate the entire year's progress. Randy will be focused on that November of 2016 will be his target to make those goals, those 2 percentage point gains and decreases in disproportionality. And all of our work needs to align to that work. In essence, it's your work. And what we will be attempting to do is make sure that you as customers are receiving the supports you need to achieve these goals. We don't teach the students at OSPI, but out in the district you're teaching the students and you're providing the mechanisms of support. You're removing the barriers so that the children can all succeed and achieve those performance targets. I hope it will be a new way, a new supportive way to support the work of the districts. Now I see some questions there. Hold on. It's a little awkward because we have one computer that we're looking at the questions and at the same time it's the PowerPoint. So I don't know if everybody sees those. They don't. So I'll read the question. And I think actually before I go on to the next one, if the mission, so the question, I don't know if this is a comment or a question. If the mission is to prepare students to be successful at post-secondary, why are we eliminating some students from even having a chance by holding them to state tests? Many successful employees cannot pass a science test, yet they can earn a high school diploma, and knowing that gives them no desire to continue with school. We all make kids have standard state exams, yet we encourage them to have unlimited desires and thinking about their post-secondary paths. This does not make sense, especially to districts with high migrant populations. And students and many not even arriving from Mexico until their high school years. I don't establish the policy, and I don't think we will have time to have a philosophical discussion of what is and what is to be on that. But I will say that the research is clear. I agree that there are some states that don't use the tests, and I know that there are discussions here about the utility of the assessment, but those decisions haven't been made in terms of whether that will continue to be a graduation requirement. It's interesting. We're again in a transition from going from where we are to 24 credits, and we're going from the MSP HISP to the Smarter Balanced. And the Smarter Balanced assessment is to an assessment not for high school completion, but it is for college readiness. So we may see some changes to policy in the future, but right now I can only act to what is, even though I may be sympathetic to your concern. Okay. So I'm going to give you some data here, the beginnings of some analytics. So one of the things we want to be able to do for the school district is unpack all of this data. It's you can go to the report card and you can get your data, and on the report card you're able to compare your data to districts that you choose. And in some ways you can go and get some trends, some statewide trends, but I want to talk about how we're going to provide some new tool sets for you to think about a new context for thinking about your data. But I want to start with just some achievement data that shows the concerns that are out there. Not a surprise when I walk you through this, but but an actuality of what it really is. So each of those squares, the top left square is fourth grade reading from 2011, 12, 13. The right square toward the top is fourth grade writing, same years. Bottom left is seventh grade math, same years. And the bottom right is eighth grade science, and it's using those same years. And what we've done is we used what we are considering the targeted subgroups that traditionally have disproportionality and are thinking about them in this way to help us unpack that disproportionality. So I'm going to take fourth grade reading and walk you through this. So if you take a look at 2011, FRL is the students on free and reduced lunch. In 2011, their fourth grade reading scores across the state of Washington were 54%, 2012 59.7%, and 2013 61%. The students who were not on free and reduced lunch had then in those same corresponding years 79.6, 82.8, and 83.4. The disproportionality scale then is you subtract those two, and you can see the disproportionality in fact decreased. It went from a negative 25.6% down to a negative 22.4%. It's the first time that some of us had looked at it this way. We knew that there was disproportionality, but when you focus on the disproportionality, at least in my mind, it's a little depressing if you're, again, looking at it from a social justice framework. If you look at the ELL population, you can see the same thing. There was a reduction from 50% down to 42%, but still a long way to go. SWD is students with disabilities. Those would be kids with IEPs. A reduction from 38% down to 34%. And that would be the targeted minority group. So that is Hispanic, Native American, and African American as a group. And you can see that it went from 25% down to 20%. So a negative 20%. So each one of those has a positive trend, but it's still very low. The disproportionality is very, very high. If you were to, I won't go through each one of those, but if you were to scan through the writing, the math, and the science, you'll see similar stories, not always going in the right direction, some of them going in the wrong direction, but it helps us think from a large standpoint where we are in terms of disproportionality at a glance. This is new data that we just created within the last few weeks, and it's the 9th grade passage rates in English language, arts, math, and science. And if you would pay attention just to that top line, it says failures, 0.0 count percent within the year, and then the years are 09, 10, 10, 11, 11, 12, out to 12, 13. So what that's saying is that's the percentage of students of all of the freshmen who took freshman classes the first time. So it's not your second year freshman, it's those students who attempted this the first time. Passage rates. So 67% of the freshmen passed all three of those classes in 09, 73% in 10, 11, 75% 11, 12. And 75% in 12-13 for an average of 73.2%. The report and data systems we're going to collect is going to unpack then the longer-term educational outcomes for those students and for the students who failed 1, 2, 3, or more of those classes. So we can link graduation rates specifically back to those students. And if you recall, the research is clear that a risk factor is a kid failing any one of those classes, and we want to be able to think about that more deeply and unpack that information to help us provide the correct supports and to remove barriers here at OSPI and to help districts remove those barriers. Now I'd like to move on to graduation rates. And the newer way of thinking about displaying the data. I propose to you, I came from Franklin Pierce School District where I was there for 28 years, and the last 5 years was the assistant superintendent in charge of operations there. And as we were working on our graduation efforts, some of you may know that Washington High School, I think it was in 2008, made the front page of the Seattle Times as the Dropout Factory. And I believe at that point in time it was 65% graduation rate for Washington High School. And no one felt good about that, but it certainly motivated us to do some thinking around what can we do, what is in our circle of influence, and are there things that we can systematically do. And so our work started in about 2007 and 2008 about building a multi-tiered system of support that really looked at these failure rates, looked at discipline, looked at attendance, and instituted systematic supports for students, real early warning systems for the adults to be able to monitor the progress or the lack of progress of students, and then systematic supports of the adults to make sure that the kids are getting what they need on a timely basis. So, cannot see whole page on this graph. Sorry, there's a question coming in. I'm trying to read the question. Just one moment. Hold on. We're trying to read the question. Is that better? I hope that's better. I'm going to keep moving on, and we'll look at the questions again. So this graph on the vertical axis is the percent of students on free and reduced lunch from 0 to 100%. And on the horizontal axis is the 2012 on-time graduation rates, so from 0 to 100%. And the frame is four-year grad rates with high schools that had more than 50 ninth graders. So I suppressed the data. If you had less than 50 ninth graders, your high school would not show up on this list. But you can, I don't have the hoverability, nor can I show that to you, but that you can then see, let's pick a school. If you were to do 80%, if you go to the graduation rates on the horizontal axis and you go to 80%, and then you stroll on up to the crossbar on the vertical axis, you'd see there's a high school that had 50% of their students were on free and reduced lunch, and yet they had an 80% graduation rate. And each of those schools are represented. You can see there are some clusters around there. And they're all over. You can see a school there that had 30% of their students who had free and reduced lunch going over horizontally, and they had a 30% graduation rate. Now, most of those schools kind of on the left-hand side of the red line tend to be alternative schools, but not all of them are alternative schools. I put the 95% red line and the 92% red line in there just to give you a mark. 95% was close to the graduation rate that year. The line, the diagonal line is a line of regression. So that's mathematically plotting that to say, is there a tendency that there's a correlation with free and reduced lunch rates and graduation rates? And the higher the slope, the higher the correlation. So you can see that that slope is relatively high, but not completely high. That does mean that there is correlation. It's no surprise to schools or school districts that there is a correlation with poverty or free and reduced lunch rates and graduation rates. I think what is different about this analytic is that you are able then to see which schools are outliers. If you were to take a look at the school that has 92 or 93% graduation rate, so you could go up that red line, and they have close to 60% free and reduced lunch rates, they would be considered an outlier. The question we might ask is, how are they doing with their other targeted populations with their Hispanics, Native American, and African American students, and we will be able to soon show you that. We'll use color gradation to be able to show that, for example, we would put a color scale of if there's very little disproportionality, we'd show the bubbles as green, and maybe if there's some, it would be yellow and some would be red. So it would give you at a glance a look at who's doing what. You may ask, what we'd like to be able to do is, well, how have they been doing over time? And I would like to, and you will be able to have an animation of this so that you could play it for a 3 or 4 year period, so you could watch those dots. And you could then say, possibly, you may have interest in some of those schools. What are they doing? They seem to be doing something that we're not doing. Maybe you're one of those schools, you don't even know that you're in that outlier area. When I was in the school district, we didn't know really where we were. We could compare ourselves. We'd compare ourselves kind of to Pierce County schools and have a sense of that, but there was no data, statewide data that could provide this kind of an analytic or a metric to help us think about who should we be talking to or who should we be visiting. So I want to talk about the difference between high school graduation rates and district graduation rates. So if you were to pull the, you can get this up out of the K-12 data and reports. You can pull all the graduation rates by districts, and then you can pull another one by schools. If you were to do that and analyze that, there's something that you would realize that's not a surprise to school districts that have any size. I would imagine if you're a smaller school district, you tend not to have an alternative school, but that might not be true. If you are a school district of any size and you have a comprehensive high school and an alternative school, this happens to be one in the King County, this school district, this is what tends to happen. You'll have a district average, and you can see the district average, the graduation rate of this district was close to 70%, and the poverty rate, or the free and reduced lunch rate, was 40%. I don't have those access titles in there, but they're the same as you saw before. So the vertical is free and reduced lunch rate, and the horizontal is the graduation rate for the class of 2012. If you then disaggregate that by the schools, what you'll find is this look. So this King County school has 3 comprehensive high schools and one alternative school. Every school district in the state has this same look when you disaggregate it by comprehensive and alternatives. What the tendency is when you separate the district into those schools, the comprehensives tend to move to the right and down, and the alternatives move to the left and up. Because the school districts, as you know, the kids move around for good reason. There's good reason, but it's just, or maybe not good reasons, but the fact of the matter is the district graduation rate is very different than each school's graduation rate. I believe at the district level, at this 36,000 foot level, we probably should look at the graduation rate of the district. I think it's important for the districts to take a look at this themselves and compare themselves this way with other schools or other alternative schools in the state. But really, I think the metric we need to look at is this metric here. So this is the 2013 graduation rates for districts. So this is all districts. It's using the same markers of free and reduced lunch on the vertical axis and the adjusted cohort graduation rate on the horizontal. I gave a couple of markers in here for you so it gives you context. The red horizontal line was the state average, free and reduced lunch average that year. So that year it was about 46%. And the graduation rate for the low income students was about 65%. And the state grad rate for all students was 76%. So those are those red lines. I know it kind of makes a checkerboard, but it gives you a context. So there actually is a school district that actually fits right on the averages. They are the district that had a graduation rate of 66% and a free and reduced lunch rate of, it looks like, 44%. That line of regression mathematically, again, just takes a look at that, that grid and mathematically plots that line down, and you can see it moves from, I'll go to the last line, which was flatter when you look at the school levels, to a almost perfect one-to-one correlation because the angle's at about 45 degrees. If you think about that, then if you look at those schools, excuse me, those districts that are to the right of the state grad rate, that's that second red line over, and above that line of regression, which is the diagonal line, those schools, we're going to get some statisticians to help with this, but their schools, I'm right now just saying if they're about 5 percentage points, between 4 and 5 percentage points above those two, tend to be outliers. They're pulling actually that line up. So, and if they're doing that over time, our thinking is there's something going on in those districts. So they don't know that they're in that group of school districts necessarily unless they have a research department that's doing this work. And there are other school districts that are lower performing, including districts. If you go down to, let's say, a district that has got a graduation rate of 78% and a free and reduced lunch rate of 28%. I don't know if you can see that blue bubble there, but that's a district. They don't know that their peer districts are performing much higher than they are unless they were to think about the data this way. So this is a tool that's supposed to help us, the system thinkers, ponder what is it that we could learn from this. Who should we talk to? This should be the beginning of a conversation, kind of an ecosystem that would help us do our work better. I believe that those districts that are outliers are not only implementing research-based programs, they're somehow implementing them in a way that makes them work. And it's not that you implement something like PBIS. I support PBIS. It's how you implement the PBIS and how do you get it down into the grain of the teachers and the support staff and the counselors within the system. How does that actually work? Or if you're using something like Safe and Civil Schools. So we are interested in talking to those districts that are outliers. I have another scale that shows there are half of those that are on that outlier side that have been there for 3 years, and we're interested in talking to them. And what I'm curious about is I think we have a way to have us ask a question of them.
Yes.
So we'd like to ask you a question. Because I'd like to know if this is useful to you, these types of analytics. Oh. I'm reading a question, apologize. The question is, can they see the question? No. Oh, okay, I'll read it to you. This is from Brian. It's disproportionality data. Will you take into account a closing of the gap that is not because the underperforming group increases, but that the comparative group decreases? That is an annual goal met if the free and reduced lunch numbers met. Met numbers were flat, but the non-free and reduced percent met numbers went down. Perhaps answer in an FAQ. That's a good question. Yeah, so you don't do anything, and so you can close the achievement gap. Yeah, that's probably kind of cooking the books. I'll ponder that. That is a great question. Yeah, because you can, by not doing anything, and if everything remains static, you would have an increase. That's not the intent. So I appreciate that question. Yeah, let's see. Does your district already use this type of reporting in middle school? Is your type of information inspired? Yeah, take the first one. So I think we put a survey up there. That's our intent, and you'll see it soon. Really, what I'd like to know is are you, the poll is open. I lost the question.
There we go. No, I'm here.
That's okay. So some of you are beginning to answer the question.
The top one. Does your district?
Does your district already use this type of report in your middle schools and high schools? So I'm going to give you a moment to think about that and answer.
And it's sort of the type of report that we're talking about is looking at the disproportionality.
Yeah, we're looking at that aggregate report comparative to other school districts on a wide array. So we're watching it come in, right? Can they see the results?
No.
Okay, so I'll tell you what the results there keep changing because you're talking about it and thinking about it and putting that in. Right now, there are about 22 votes in, 23 votes in. About a quarter of you say yes, we track it at both in middle and high school, and another quarter say yes, but only at high school, and about half of you say no, but are interested in starting. So, and there's still, the votes are still coming in, and we're still getting that same percentage. Now it's running at 27%. Yes, we track both. Now it's 33%. We track both of these at middle and high school. 25% yes, but only at high school, and 42% no, but are interested in starting. So is that? Oh, that's the time. So are we 46% voted?
Yeah.
So we'll close it. We're trying to get a sense because we want to make sure that the tools that we are creating are helpful to you. And I wanted to leave you today. So we will continue this, and I'm happy to. You can email me, or is there a way for them to post questions onto this, or do they just email us?
They can post questions here. They could email us directly after this conference. Fine too. We will get this all on the website, on our workshop website.
We're trying to make sure we produce tools that are useful to you. So these, I couldn't get these when I was in a district, and I want to be able to give them to you and want to make sure that they are helpful to you. And then I wanted to leave you with a specific set of activities that you can do in your school district to change. And some of you may have already been doing this. It's something that we hadn't done. Let's see, how do you close this?
Well, there were some questions there.
Oh, there's more questions.
People wanted to know how many people are in this webinar right now, and
There's about 28.
28 people are in the webinar.
you can show the results live.
I don't think we can show the results. Well, wait. Oh, we're learning. Wait.
This is closed. We can share it.
Okay, here it is. Now that it's closed, we can share it. So a third of you are tracking this at an aggregate level, and you're comparing your work with peers, both at middle and high school. 25% are tracking that, but at high school 42% are interested in starting. And I'm very interested in providing any tools for you all that help you in this work, so you're doing less work and you're actually doing more program development. These summative statewide reports, we'd hopefully be able to get to you more quickly. So I've got one more slide that I'd like to go through and then ask you one more question, and then we'll close the webinar. And as I said, some of you may be doing this, but most of you know there are a variety of student information systems in the state of Washington. Skyward is the biggest one. But there's PowerSchool and there's ESIS. There are a variety of them. But you can pull this report out of all of them on a monthly basis, and it's something that we discovered about 3 years ago that began to really make a big difference. When the P210 comes out, which forces you to look at last year's data and clean up last year's data, and then we provide the graduation data about in January, the year after the graduates complete. So this January, you'll see your high school's graduation report, their four-year from 2014 and 5-year from 2013. And that's all authenticated through the P210. And what we did for years and years was we would do all of our work for about that 3-month period from September to December when they closed the P210. And about 3 years ago, we started running a list of, from our student information system, the list that were the dropout codes. So I've given you from kind of the Cedars manual. The first ones are completers, the GO, GA, GB, C2, and then you skip down to the bottom, the confirmed transfers, TO, T1, T2, T3. Those are kind of good to go for either reason in terms of dropout. Those codes, C1, D1, D2, all the way down to U1, U2, U3, would count as dropouts and then would also count against your graduation rates. What we did is we started running that list of those dropout codes on a monthly basis at a district level and brought that to the principal's meeting and gave that list of students to each principal. The principal in turn would take that to the counselor's meeting on a monthly basis, and they would begin to analyze who these kids were and start to kind of, before the trail went cold, find those kids and recapture those students as soon as they could. So what happened, I kid you not, we had a list of, I think there were probably 30 to 40 names on each sheet of paper. At our 2 comprehensive schools, there were 3 to 4 sheets of paper when we started this. When I left 2 years ago, we'd give the lists out. They were normally a half a page to a page. So they went from somewhere around 100 students or more down to about 20. And the difference was it was a list of names that were kind of unknown to the principal and to the system, and at that point in time the principals could come up to me and actually say, they would tell me at that point the name of the kid and what was going on. So that which was kind of invisible and just this big data set became something that was personal and something that folks were attending to. Now, you may be doing this already at your districts. I just don't know. I just wanted to share a strategy that we used that made a huge difference in terms of attending to children, number one, but number two, it improved our graduation rates tremendously by attending to this level of detail on an ongoing, systematic basis, other than being compliant in December to complete the P210. So I give that to you, and I think we have a question regarding that, because I'm curious if folks are doing this, number one, or anyone, so number one, if they're doing it, and number two, I've got to see what the question is, how we framed it. Hold on. The question's coming. One moment. If you can sing the Jeopardy theme, that would be. No, that's okay. We can use this. I think we gave you the wrong question first, but I want to do this one this way. So, if you are already doing this, please say yes. So, but if you're not and you're interested, let me know. You don't have to say. Well, that's okay. They're coming in. We'll show it to you. So 83% right now are saying yes, they're already using this type of data. 14% say no. I'll kind of give you the, I feel like I'm calling a horse race right now. 13% no, 22% no, 67% yes, 11% yes. I will begin using this at the district level. 40% have voted. There's still 70% who are yes. I wish we could actually have the 64% or yes. I'd love to have a conversation because I'm sure there are even better ways of doing this that I'm not being able to learn. Oh, it's dropping down to 54% is yes, 52% have voted. 23% say yes, we will begin using this data at the district level. So I don't know what that means at this point. I don't know if that means you're going to start doing it or if it means you're not doing it yet. So now it's 50% are saying yes, they do this already, and that's 56% of the folks out there.
There's a 29% that is saying
And
they need more information.
they need more information. And I'll give it about another 15, 20 seconds, and then I think we can post this to you. And as we're looking at this, I am very interested in those of you who haven't done this, contacting either Rhett or myself so that we could learn from you, so we would give you more information so you could begin to do this work, so you could generate that list. I would love for you then at our next webinar to be able to report back to us that how large that list was and your conversation with your buildings or your district in terms of the work that you will do to reduce that work. I'd also like to learn from the others who are already doing it, what are the efficient ways of doing this work, and has it in fact made a difference? What did your lists look like, and what are your processes that you have in place to reduce the list down? I think that's how we learn from each other. So those of you who would like to have the conversation and might be willing to actually do this work, we'd like to hear from you, and hopefully you would be willing to report to us the work that you're doing and the results that you're getting. And then we're going to open up some questions, and then we'll have to close it out. Sorry, we're reading your questions here. So no, but we're interested in starting. Probably since you were at FPSD, how many people are on this webinar? So we answered that, responding to the survey. Let's see.
Tricia, we don't know. We won't know until after we look at who attended this to know what districts are represented by this.
And we'll get better at this webinar. This is new to us. We've got to figure out the best way to get this information out to you. Yeah, we're interested in having conversations about improving the dropout prevention systems. And at the state level, I want to provide tools to you that can help in this conversation. I had another slide, but I think I'll save that for the next webinar. I hope this information was useful to you. It's available to you soon, and please, those of you who are interested in beginning to think about running that dropout list and beginning a new process, we'd like to hear from you. So for the group in the room, we thank you for attending, and we'll see you in about a month.
I'd like to give one more update on this, that we have another one of these scheduled for next month, the third Wednesday from 10 to 11. We're going to continue our data discussion, probably focusing on absenteeism and behavior specifically. We'd love for all of you to continue to attending, and yes, this is a learning process. We're just looking at ways that we can better help districts and get this information out there of what's working and how we can better facilitate your needs. So please give us any feedback you have. Send it to me via email, rhett.nelson@k12.law.us. You can find me at on our website as well. Thank you.